Welcome to the Israel Reality Podcast. In today's episode, I'm joined by journalist Theo Padnos, author of Blindfold, who spent 2 harrowing years as a hostage in Syria. Theo shares his incredible story and offers unique insights into the complexities of terrorism, jihad, and the Palestinian conflict. Together, we explore the motivations behind radicalization, the historical context of Islam, and the cyclical nature of violence. Theo emphasizes the importance of understanding the enemy, addressing the root causes of conflict, and the challenges posed by family and community dynamics in the radicalization process. We also delve into the psychological factors affecting young men in conflict zones, the role of education and environment in shaping behavior, and the global responsibility to confront these critical issues. Theo brings invaluable perspectives on the realities of hostage situations, the nature of threats, and the delicate possibilities of negotiation, highlighting the need for creative solutions in the face of indoctrination and violence. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to help us bring these important stories to a wider audience. Now let's dive into this gripping conversation with Theo Padnos.
Okay. Hi, Theo.
Hi.
This is Neil Kummer from Islam Jihad, the new name of our podcast, which changed over from peopleofisrael.com. And we're interviewing Theo Padnos, whose book Blindfold.
Padnos, P-A-D-N-O-S.
What? P-A? What?
P-A-D-N-O-S. P-A-D-N-O-S. Padnos. It's a Russian name.
Padnos. It's a Russian name? I thought it was... so.
Вот это
not
русское имя.
Oh, yeah? What languages do you not speak, let's say? You speak a lot of languages.
Hebrew.
Arabic? Hebrew, okay.
Hebrew, I don't.
But your dad is a Hebrew person,
Well,
or whatever.
He's a Beni Israel, as they would say in
Beni
Arabic. A son of Israel.
Okay, Beni Israel, a son of Israel. Okay. And you learned Arabic, you learned Russian, you learned what you studied English literature. So
French and German.
What?
The French and German, European languages are my best.
European languages. Okay. And what brought you to go to Syria? You went to Syria a couple of years before the revolution. No, Betzalel, one second. Betzalel is going in as a guest, but let me just turn off his, 1 second. Can you turn off your camera, Betzalel, please? Oh, well, it doesn't matter. We can maybe edit it later. Okay, thanks. So you went to Syria a couple of years before the revolution, and what drove you there? I know a lot of listening to what you wrote and what you said. A lot of it was a desire to be faithfully and fully employed, and have an audience. You both
It's
wanted
true.
to earn.
It's
Yeah,
true.
it's true, right? To earn a living, which is a noble thing, and you also wanted to do it in a way that would amuse and entertain and inspire and inform people, I guess.
Instruct.
Right? And that's probably still.
Yes, and instruct.
What's that?
And instruct, yes.
And instruct.
Amuse,
right.
entertain, and instruct.
And instruct, and not just inform, but to instruct, which suggests to give people a possible sense of direction, not just information which they can process whatever the heck which way they want. Is that? I mean, I'm not. I feel like I'm,
No,
putting you on the stand here. What?
Nope.
No,
It's
okay?
all correct so far.
So even to give, so it's even didactic in the sense of providing not only information which can be used any which way, but to provide a vector of motion, like to direct people into possible directions. Like you're one of the subtitles of your book is, I guess it's torture, imprisonment, and enlightenment, which suggests that that's something. The fact that you're publicizing that suggests the fact that you believe you have some sort of an inside track to that, or that it didn't just happen in a random sort of way. it happened maybe purposefully, like
What is it?
you know,
What,
yeah,
what
it enlightenment,
to what does this
enlightenment. In
pronoun
other
refer?
words, what's that?
The
Yeah,
pronoun
in
it.
other words,
What do you speak of?
it. I'm talking about enlightenment. Is
Okay. Yes. Well,
yeah,
you have to understand that titles are marketing devices invented by
right,
publishers.
right, okay,
And but yes, I have to stand behind my title because I am the author of that book, and my name is on the cover. So I believe that you're asking why is this book that I wrote, which is called Blindfold, and the subtitle is a memoir of torture. What else? Something and enlightenment.
yeah, torture,
Memoir of
imprisonment,
torture and
enlightenment, yeah,
imprisonment and
something,
enlightenment. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah. Why did they put that? I think they put that because the editor and the publishing company felt that that experience of mine among the terrorists um, for 2 years in Syria allowed me to, um, come to a level of understanding and, enlightenment is too strong a word in everyday
yeah. It's too strong
conversation.
a
But
word,
anyway,
right? You know what?
but what they mean,
Since
or what
yeah,
what I mean is that I think I have come to a unusual understanding of hostages and terrorists and what it's like to live, why they take hostages, what happens to hostages when they live underground among terrorists over a period of time, and what we can do to stop this silliness, this horror.
so is this horror related to a global jihad? Is it?
In
If it is
many
related,
cases,
how is
yes.
it related? Yeah,
Well, they are taking hostages because they are angry at the world, but particularly about angry at America and Israel. You quiet.
right.
It's my doggy.
Hi, doggy.
But yes, they
So
imagine themselves taking over the world. These terrorists someday. Yes.
right. So it's not, but it's not just a revenge kind of thing. It's a positive statement. And as I understand it, Mohammed started out with some sort of a peaceful religion in Mecca, and when he realized he couldn't get a very big public going, he moved over to Medina and tried to get the Jews to convert. And then when that didn't happen, he decided to make it into a political and military movement. And so, at its base, at its core, at its origin, it may well be a revenge story of Muhammad not getting a public and revenging. It's a little bit like Anxiety of Influence. You'll be familiar with that title. The not wanting to admit his where his sources really were. The fact that a lot of his stuff is based in Judaic um, literature and thought, and there's an
I think he
element of
admits that. I think
revenge.
he's well aware of
What?
that.
What?
I think he's well aware that the foundations of Islam lie in the Hebrew Bible.
Right. So the question is, he is well aware of it. I don't know how much. I'm not so familiar with it, so I don't know how much he publicizes that. And also, I'm not aware if he incorporates in his literature. I mean, if assuming that the Quran was written by him, which is a subject of an
Yeah,
open
I assume it is
question.
not.
What?
I assume it is not. I
It's
assume it
not.
is
It was
not.
written a couple
Well,
10
anyway,
years later,
he
right?
was,
Yeah.
of
So
course, he
my
was
my
illiterate in any case.
he was illiterate, right?
He,
Uh,
the
go ahead.
story of this particular download of Revelation. He was hugged by
No.
the angel Gabriel, Jibril, and
Okay.
as he was expelling the air in his lungs, out poured these verses.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And it was like this is an oral tradition. In other words, this is like the Homeric
Yeah, I think it
tradition.
began of course, as the Hebrew Bible probably did, as an oral tradition, right?
Yeah, the Hebrew Bible. I'm not so sure that it admits to that, and I don't know if I don't
No,
know
the
if
Quran doesn't admit to that either.
oh they don't do it either, right?
Well,
Um,
I mean,
yeah,
to the extent that's right. Somebody had to. It is acknowledged that Muhammad was an illiterate and could neither read nor write, so he couldn't possibly have written this document. He had
right.
to communicate it to somebody else who then wrote it down. But
Okay.
yes, they believe that after that initial downloading from God of the sacred verses, um, that it became an unalterable and fixed in stone, and every syllable remained in the texts that we have
Uh-huh.
today, exactly as Muhammad delivered it to his scribe.
Uh-huh. Ah, so he
Mhm.
delivered it to a scribe after
That's
his
right.
exhalation of yeah, okay, got it.
Right.
So getting back to that, my question about whether um whether he admits to or it admits to a now once again, was that in Mecca? That's before
Yeah, I
Medina,
believe.
right?
Yeah, it was in a cave above Mecca.
Okay, so, but what I've understood is that not until he went to Medina, because he was unsuccessful in getting a good following in Mecca, did he
Oh,
eh, did he expand on the the military political side of it?
right.
You know,
Well,
the beheadings and the rape and the
is your
G.
point that
What? What?
is your point that we're dealing with an expansionist philosophy, or kind of a they required a manifesto to take over the world, and this is the manifesto. Yes, all that is true.
Okay. So it doesn't, in other words, it doesn't admit that, like what you had said in explaining why people keep hostages is that they're mad at, the great Satan and the little Satan, as Iran
Mm.
poses it, of America and Israel. And but but my question is, if even before being mad at somebody, if they have some sort of an ideal that would enable them to, let's say, take over the world without being mad at anybody. In other words, is that part of their ultimate goal is to take over the world for Islam, right? Um,
Um,
and
okay. Well, you realize that we're dealing with 1/5. When we say they,
yes,
you mean Muslims, right?
Muslims, yeah, 1/5 of the world's population or something, or
So it's 1/5 of the
about
world's
that,
population.
right?
So as many Muslims as there are on the planet, let's say a billion or some billion
Two
plus.
billion, yeah, whatever, 1.8,
Okay,
yeah,
I think we can probably agree that there are that many iterations of Islam. So to say they is convenient for us, but I don't think it's
right.
helpful in terms of understanding a global phenomenon.
Uh-huh. But if the core of their belief and their practice is the Quran,
The,
is that
yes,
would you say that's accurate? Yes.
and
Yeah.
perhaps not really, because many of the people that we're dealing with are scarcely literate, and when they recite the Quran, even like many of the people that I was imprisoned with, some of them could had so little education, they deeply believed in something, um,
Yeah. Something.
but
Something. Yeah.
yeah, they believed in something. But anyway, I'm not sure, I'm not persuaded that it would be recognizable to other people, to other Muslim scholars, as Islam. They would certainly identify as Muslims, but we're really talking about a, a creed of the most basic, like, impulses, and if you want to say that out of the current out of a sacred text, out of the sacred text emerges the impulse to jihad, I'm a little dubious about this, because there's so
Okay.
many other factors that contribute it to
Uh-huh.
listen, I think they would create the jihad without the Quran, if that's what you want to know. They have a
Uh-huh.
much they don't need the Quran to do the jihad.
Uh-huh.
It's helpful,
So,
but it's not the only thing.
but
They would find some other
um,
document.
they find some other document. So, is it something in? But you're like, what holds them together if it's not like another origin
Family
story that I
ties.
heard about? What?
Family
What holds
ties.
Muslims? Go ahead.
First of
You
all, they're not held together. I mean, they have you ever seen a Muslim soccer team play soccer? They argue much more than they play,
right.
particularly if there's Shia and Sunni
So
involved.
right.
So they're
So
not
that's
held together.
right. So that's what I've heard from this Arabist Moti Kadar, who says exactly that. He says that the purpose and origin of one of the purposes and origin of Islam, and I'll distinguish it from Muslim individual practice or belief, is to hold together a bunch of people who, by their
Yeah.
very nature, are
Right.
are not going to be held together.
Can we not
They're
say that same thing? The beautiful Hebrew Bible.
yeah. Go ahead.
It
Can you
binds
say that
people
about the
together.
beautiful Hebrew Bible? I don't know.
Yeah.
Can you? Where do you see that?
Bereshit bara Elohim from the first
Yeah.
word.
So
I mean, it's a document that gives people a group identity and it binds them to a national experience and it brings the individual into the community. It's a beautiful thing. I think all religions have texts that do this, and may God be praised.
uh-huh. Yeah. So the
I
question
sense that
is,
you would like to.
yeah.
Yeah, I sense that you would like to figure out some
Well,
essential way that that Islam promotes jihad. Well, it does. I mean, Islam certainly does promote jihad. However, are the jihadists themselves well enough educated in Islam to understand that their sacred book is telling them to do this shit? No, I don't think most of them are. Like the young men that I came to know, you say, "Hey, can you find the place in the Quran where it says go kill that guy?" They'd be like, "The Quran doesn't say that." Can you find a place in the Quran where it says hit this person in the head like you just did to me? Well, it probably does say that in many places, but they don't know that.
right.
That's not why they're
Okay.
doing it.
Yeah. Well, but they're doing it's part of a tradition. Then you can say it's something that they're
No,
that
they're loyal to their family. They have instructions from their cousin, and it's
right. Well,
clan
that
loyalty. It's the loyalty of the tribe.
right. Okay. Good. Yeah.
That's why
That
they.
I mean, I would. Yeah.
That's why they're committing these individual crimes. Like when the mystery of, for instance, the October 7th attacks is you have something like 3,000 suicidal, homicidal individuals ready,
Yeah.
prepared to die and to sacrifice themselves and to murder and and kill moms and dads in their beds and children and commit these horrible
Yeah.
atrocities. They've been
Yeah.
planning this for more than a year, and they could read the Quran. You could. There's a mystery in that it is not easy to persuade 3,000 individuals of any faith, even Muslim faith, to do this. How do they do this? Well, yes, they do use the Quran, but that the IDF knows nothing about, and neither does the CIA or the Mossad or anything about how they generate this offensive power. Yeah, they don't. No, they if they saw it
Well,
happening beneath their noses, they wouldn't
yes.
recognize. That's how ignorant they are.
Well, what about? I mean, the simple answer to that is, which you can see like all over the place, is that they educate their little kids from the earliest age,
Yeah,
like to the want to kill Jews and to destroy Israel. Apparently, they have
there's a little bit of that.
UNRWA. What's that? A little bit of that?
There's a
I
bit,
think it's
there's a little bit of that, but
yeah,
that's not that doesn't account for
it does.
that doesn't turn a well. If that were the case, everyone watches TV. You would get all the entire society coming to kill you, but that's not what's happening. You only get 3,000.
No, but I mean, I think it was a strategically engineered attack. It wasn't, if they, probably Israel, even though it was a dramatic intelligence and strategic failure, that they weren't able to know that it was coming, supposedly. Um, that, that had there been, 30,000 of them rather than 3,000, it would have been harder. It would have been impossible to conceal that. As it is, it's pretty hard to believe that Israel was so completely unaware of what was going to take
It's hard
place.
to conceal 3,000, and they managed it. And the next time,
Yeah,
as they say, there will be more, and they will conceal it better. And if you don't
right.
think that, then God
No,
have mercy
I
on you.
absolutely. I think that's an important point, and they said it themselves. And I think that's part of the whole, kind of the Western problem is that uh, I mean, Israel pretended that they believed that um, that Hamas and Gaza and the West Bank wanted the soccer field, as you put it in your last chapter, the soccer field that was always going to be a soccer field. Uh, you know, um, in other words, a Western peace and bourgeois honor and satisfaction, and that's why they enabled so to speak. They presented that that's why they enabled them to get billions of dollars and to supply on their own billions of dollars or a lot of money, whatever, from Israel to Qatar. They pretended that that's really what Gaza wanted and needed. They just want a bourgeois life like everybody else, and yet they said, uh,
I
you
think
know,
that's true.
well, that's what they pretend, right? That's what America seems to pretend,
No, I think
also, right?
no,
You think that's true?
believe that the Gazans want the bourgeois life like everybody else.
Oh, you think they do? Okay, so
Yes, I
if
do.
if that were the case, if the question is, does Hamas want that? I mean, if Hamas wanted that, and if you, let's say you were the head of Hamas, and you wanted a bourgeois life for the citizens of Gaza and the West Bank, or let's say, should say Gaza, and you were given billions of dollars, would you take that money for yourself and go live in, or take half of that money for yourself? Let's say $6 billion, take half and go live in Doha, and spend another billion or so for tunnels so that your militants
Is your
could
point that?
hide and attack from there. What? Or
Yeah, I mean,
would you build a Singapore with
yeah, your
you
point
know
is that
yeah.
among the Hamas people, there are those who actually don't want the bourgeois life. They want to carry out the jihad. I think that's obvious.
It is no, but you're saying among, and I'm saying
Yes.
that that that
Oh, you're
unites
saying oh,
all the jihadists. I
those-
mean, all the people who act like jihadists. It's the kind of thing that it's a behavior thing that if you act and talk and walk like a jihadist, and beheading and rape, and you call your mom and say, "I just killed 10 Jews and I have their blood on my hands," and you educate the kids, that's actually what you become. It's not like you seem to be saying that it's some sort of small minority, and I
yeah.
and I would venture to say that let's say they claim to have
Those-
30,000 people, and
No, they have certainly have more now.
a lot more now.
I'm
Yeah,
persuaded that this current war has created a new generation, and everybody wants surely the however many wanted to kill wash Israel into the sea beforehand. It's
it's
increased by
multiplied
leaps and
now.
bounds
Yeah,
exponentially. Yeah, it's multiplied.
yeah.
The
So
problem is much worse now than before.
right. So
I,
so the question is, let's say the core. Again, I keep trying to go back to the core beliefs, and you seem to say that
well,
it's not a that jihad is not a core belief,
of course it
and
is. Yes, jihad is a core
oh,
belief. It is a core
it is.
belief. But listen, I mean, the notion that you have young men studying the text and then reading and saying, "Oh, the text tells me to do blah 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 and blah blah blah," and therefore off I go. That's not
Yeah, no,
happening.
no, I wouldn't
That's not the way
pretend
it
that.
works.
I wouldn't. But these are not literary scholars, and they're not
No,
reading Fahon in Algeria. They're they're people who are, as you said, influenced
even
by
if
their
they did,
famula, by their family, and
yes.
their cousins and uncles. So,
Well, by
um,
bombing also, by
mom,
airstrikes,
mom and pop, what? Yeah.
by
Well,
airstrikes,
what? Yeah.
and by
And
confinement.
right.
If you, it's important to understand the psychology of how one creates a jihad. One does there is a recipe for this, and the recipe is they vary it every few weeks. However, they are fantastic bakers, and when one formula doesn't work, they resort to another formula. And of course, the Quran plays into all of this. But it's a mistake to say that Quran is the essential ingredient. It is an ingredient, but there are
Hmm.
other ingredients equally essential, more essential. I think imprisonment is having been imprisoned and having watched the psychology of prisoners develop, and we were often kept with other with men of the jihad because they fell afoul of their confreres, their compadres. So those men came into the prison wanting to kill and rape and murder, but they came out much more with a much deeper conviction and
Of what?
about
Of
killing and
wanting
murder
to
and
rape, kill, and
suicide.
murder, rape and murder.
I don't
What?
know about rape. Rape, no, but murder and kill, yes.
From being in
Rape,
prison.
rape is a difference. Hmm?
From
Yes,
being
of
in
course,
prison, they
prison
came out that way.
Yes, prison is a hate factory. It's a horrible thing, and to the extent that the citizens of Gaza are not permitted to move around the world, yeah, I believe that I think that that is an apt and rich, fecund environment for creating the jihad. Much more important, for instance, than any verse of the Quran. Like if you really wanted to diffuse the threat and live in safety, you would address the most important factors that put Israel at risk first. And the most
Okay.
important factor, yeah, I think the most important factor is confinement, isolation, and confinement.
Oh.
And
Now,
yeah,
how
and
are
then,
they confined? Let's say they have a border with Egypt. Um,
yeah,
as I understand, it belonged to Egypt, and it was only and while it was part of Egypt, and while the West Bank was part of Jordan, they had no there were no people with a nationalist ambition to make a Palestinian state. It was part of Egypt, and the West Bank was part of Jordan. And yet, as soon as Israel wins it back in a defensive war, then all of a sudden it becomes a national ambition. And when Israel withdraws by force tens of thousands of their citizens who are um, making the land grow, doing having a productive lifestyle. As soon as Israel withdraws those people, then they go back, and Israel makes sure that they have 30,000 jobs a day, and make sure that they have unlimited amount of money from Qatar and from themselves.
uh,
And
it, it,
Egypt can also open it up as much as they choose to. Then
pardon me
why is Israel to blame for
I'm
confining
not,
them if uh, if and for oppressing them if they have all the means with which to make a profitable state, and instead they set up a trap for, and I understand there's plenty of the Palestinians in Gaza who say this. They set up a trap where they attack Israel and then they hide, and they let the Palestinian civilians, quote unquote, who they've not built any shelters for, be decimated. So, in what way
listen,
is
listen.
that imprisonment? Yeah,
Well,
go ahead.
I sense that your point is that these people are behaving in a beastly and horrible way, and that they have unaccountable. Their behavior is
No, it's
unaccountable, and
very
they're not allowed to
accountable.
go.
That's the thing. I think by virtue of jihad, it's perfectly accountable. They believe that death is a
Irrational,
superior state of being
irrational.
to life, and they believe that if they can make martyrs of hundreds of thousands, in this case just tens of thousands, of civilians, that these people were raised to believe that that's a superior state of being, is being dead on behalf of of jihad. And so, if all this is framed as part of the jihad, then it all makes perfect sense, and it also enables this continuing belief in refugee status, which in no other part of the world is handed down from generation to generation except there. So it makes perfect sense. It's not more beastly or less beastly than the basics of jihad, which include rape jihad, beheading jihad, all of which were accredited to Muhammad, and because he was the perfect guy and he did these things, so it's the way to go. So I don't think that they're beastly of their own nature. I think they're, and
They're
you're
living in a
saying that,
beastly way.
yeah, go ahead. I'll let you talk. But I just think that I'm crediting jihad with it. I'm not crediting a literary jihad. It may be founded in the Quran, but it's based, as you said, in tradition handed down from family members to other family members, and from the overall society. They did, after all, vote in Hamas, And go ahead. So I'll let you say, if it's not a beastly kind of society or a beastly government, what is it? Sorry for going on so long.
Wait,
Yeah.
oh no, I understand. It sounds to me as though what you're saying is we are Israel and you personally and your friends and family confronted by this wicked and loathsome enemy, and you would like other people to acknowledge the wickedness and the loathsomeness of the enemy. Is that correct?
Well, I would also recognize that the people who were killed, who were murdered and slaughtered, how terribly ironic it was that those were the people who met them at the border continually, brought them to hospitals. That Sinwar
Yeah.
himself was released in a humanitarian exchange of 1,000 prisoners to one, and that he was operated on by brain surgeons in Israel, which saved his
Yeah.
life. So
So
there's a different kind of we everybody recognizes the humanity of the darkest villains, but
do we?
you have to judge a tree by its
Yeah.
fruit, by the way it acts. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, it sounds to me as though you are shocked and alarmed and dismayed by the nature
Shocked,
of
alarmed, and
your
what?
by the
Shocked, alarmed,
nature
and
by the nature of the people who have committed these horrible atrocities against the people of Israel.
I think this is no. I think this is the way the Crusades went. This is the way jihad has been going on for 1,500 years. I don't think anybody who has a toe in history should be surprised at this. It's
Okay,
surprising that it happens in our day, and it's
yeah,
it's surprising that these people put it on Facebook in real time and showed it to their,
right, right.
showed it to
That,
their
that would
parents
find
and to
it
the people's
dismaying.
parents. Yeah. But
Yeah.
it's not
Okay.
surprising in the least.
Okay. Not surprising, but anyway, it has unsettled you and dismayed you and put you into a state of despair, caused you to despair.
No, I don't despair of it. I'm hopeful that the world
Yeah.
will
What
wake
you
up.
hope for?
I'm hopeful. Here's what I'm
Yeah.
hopeful of. You have to have some hope,
Yeah.
right? Otherwise, why do you
Yes.
get out of bed in the morning? I'm hopeful that and I'm kind of framing this as I speak. I'm hopeful that the world will wake up and see that a good portion of the world's population um, have other interests and other loyalties than having a mowed lawn and a soccer field to play on, and that there is a way of possibly. I'll tell you one of the suggestions that one of the guys gave, Moti Kadar One Arabis. He said, "Look, the whole point of hold on one second, please don't write me notes, okay? Yeah, the the whole the whole point of Islam was to change the direction, to reverse the trend of families fighting families, uh, and their loyalties to families by creating some sort of a common bond that they wouldn't be fighting each other, and
Hmm.
that it's failed because they still hate each other. You were the war that you were in, of the Syrian president against his population, where he killed 400,000 people, and nobody in the world except the Israelis who set up hospitals on the border seemed to care a whit about that. And um, and all the other Muslim versus Muslim and Muslim versus non-Muslim wars all over the world, um, the, which are it's at least half of the most all of the terrorists in the world are Muslims, and more than half of the wars conducted are Muslim wars. So I'm saying that the possibility is if we reverse it and say, listen, we're putting you guys into families, and you're going to have caliphates just like you want, except it's going to be based on your own family, and we're going to have some sort of a governing body. I don't know if
Do
that's
you
a
expect that?
practical thing, but I
Right.
think there's I
Well,
think we have to have some sort of a. That's kind of why I'm conducting this discussion, and hopefully you'll get some insight. Your basic approach seems to be, well, if you conduct yourself as if everybody around you is civilized, then they'll become civilized. And my
no,
contention is,
no,
okay, good. I'll
no.
let you
I
talk.
don't
Go,
believe
go
that.
ahead.
I don't believe
Okay,
that.
go ahead.
No, I mean you need to
No,
understand how the jihad is created and and then
yeah.
you have to disassemble this creation.
Uh,
It's not very
okay.
complicated. I
So
mean,
what I understood that
uh,
you can
uh,
tell me if this Islamic history better than I. My understanding is that it was created because he couldn't get followers another way. So he said, "Look, I'm going to
I'm not sure
kill."
that Islamic history moves into.
What's that? Sorry. Go ahead. Say it again.
Well, we're trying to understand. Okay, well, the situation is that there is a large and powerful force living next door to you that wants to kill you and slit your
Right.
throats.
Right.
And it is in the interest of the beautiful nation of Israel to diffuse this threat. And you say, well, let's go back and look at Islamic history. And I say,
Right.
no, that's not relevant.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
We're not dealing with young men who are poring over the
Hmm.
pages of Islamic history, although it does happen.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
we the threat consists of young men who are possessed by longing for suicide and longing for homicide. And we don't know how widespread this threat is, but it is certainly present and probably getting worse. So it's in your interest and in the interest of peace and harmony everywhere to recognize this threat, understand how it's created, and then to diffuse
Hmm.
it. Um,
Uh-huh.
I don't think that I wouldn't begin with Islamic history, and I don't see the relevance of soccer fields either. Soccer fields are nice, but they're not going to help. You can give these kids a soccer field, and they will take up
Right.
the guns and come and kill you.
Right.
So I don't
Eh,
the
yeah.
illusions that you ascribe to me and to everybody else in the West. I don't think
Yeah.
they are.
Are real or
I
relevant.
think I
Okay.
think they are. I don't think we have those illusions. I don't. I very few people do. I think we acknowledge the seriousness of the threat. We're just more intelligent,
Okay.
and well, I shouldn't say that. We just
That's right. You can say
we
that.
we're interested in how like when you remember in Silence of the Lambs, you have young Jodie Foster. Did you see this movie, Silence of the Lambs?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, when you have she was interested in Hannibal Lecter. Like what makes Hannibal Lecter tick? She wanted to go talk to him. That's why she went to him in the first place. She had a problem. There was other other like
Homicidal
homicidal
maniacs.
beasts,
Yeah.
cannibals out there. Yeah, homicidal maniacs out there. So she said, "You're the
Yeah.
chief homicidal maniac. Teach me how it's done. How do you? Why does this happen?" And
Right.
well, the book kind of gives you one theory of how this is done.
Yeah. What was the
That theory
theory?
is, well, that particular theory is it,
Not relevant?
Hannibal believes that. No, I don't think it is relevant. I'll tell you anyway, just because it's fun. Hannibal is a cannibal, like he consumes other human beings. But he says of
Yeah.
the other serial killers, they're just garden variety serial killers. They are like of a lower order, and he believes that there's like a hierarchy of wickedness, and he's at the top. And anyway, yeah, nature itself, in his notion, is wicked, and he is a wicked creature within nature. But you cannot reduce. At one point, he says to Agent Starling, "Because you're a little starling, just a little birdie, and and I am like a apex predator, and you little starling, you're not going to be able to comprehend the evil that exists in nature. It is just a fact.
Mhm.
It is unalterable, and
Right.
good for you for trying to understand. But he says you cannot reduce me to a formula, Agent Starling, because she keeps trying to understand his psychology. Like, tell me about your childhood, as the FBI does, and what, like,
Right.
why did you
Right.
become this way? And he's like, I didn't become this way. I'm part of the natural world, and there is evil in the natural world. It's just an element in nature. It's always out
Okay.
there. It's
Okay. So,
ungovernable.
so
It,
you're saying it's
mm.
inherent in their nature somehow?
No, no, I'm not saying this. Not at all. No, I'm saying this is what Hannibal Lecter is saying. No, but I think that yeah, in this notion of how evil works in the world, evil is an element in the natural world, just as the rain and snow are elements, and wind, and it would be difficult to alter the wind. It's always there. This is Hannibal's point. Anyway, no, I believe that this is not like nature. These people are subject to culture, and I think that if you gave me 100 people in Aleppo, I could turn them into jihadists, or I could turn them into lovely soccer players.
Hmm.
and I
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, but that's just okay.
I
That's
would
100. In other words, by isolating them from their families and starting a soccer cult
yes.
or a jihadist cult.
Mm, that's something. Yeah, I think that both of those. Listen. We want flourishing people who participate in a peaceful and harmonious way with the world around them, and learn and grow and develop. And the alternative model, yeah, is to is isolation and mind control, and the circumstances in which it is easy to control somebody's mind and body, and to transform their psychology such that they want to become lunatic serial killers, or
Or
are
devoted soccer
right.
players. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry. Go
Yeah, I
ahead. I
mean,
want to interrupt. Yeah.
well,
No, I'm just
I
saying.
just think that when we talk about the making of the jihad, I don't think it is helpful to discuss Islamic history or even the
Okay.
Quran, because these are
Okay.
not, when you watch these young men being formed, you are not seeing them. They do a little bit of studying, yes, and they do. However, I don't think I I don't think
Okay.
that
You don't
it's
think
their
that
studying
that's
that's
okay.
making them crazy.
Okay. So what would you do if you're because you suggested that you kind of blame Israel and you think that Israel's going to make it worse uh, by trying to control Hamas. So you I'd like to hear what you seem to have a thought about a realistic and appropriate response to to 3,000 jihadists coming in. What do you think the realistic and
Yeah.
appropriate response is?
I mean, I think that realistic. I think that there are. I mean, we should talk about what can be done at this moment. Uh, At this
Whatever,
moment,
even or 3 months ago or 20 years ago or whenever. It doesn't really
yeah. I
matter.
mean,
If you have a thought, let's hear what it is.
I just believe that violence begets violence, and peace and success and happiness begets peace, success,
Well,
happiness, and I think.
that's exactly what
Mhm.
um, the operating principle that Israel was working according to, which eventuated in this attack. And
Well, they didn't do it well enough in
we
this case.
we voiced that. Let me just say it again. We Netanyahu and his people up there voiced that. They said, "Listen, these people just want their soccer field and their mowed lawn, and we're going to give it to them. We're giving them billions of dollars, and we're going to keep our head in
Mhm.
the sand, and we're going to give
Well,
them
that wasn't.
30,000 jobs a day where they earn 10 times what they earn in Gaza, and that's going to make them happy. Plus,
No, that
if
wasn't. That
anybody,
was.
uh, 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 yeah, I'm just repeating what I said before, that the people who believed in that, who believe that these guys are really nice guys, ended up dead, ended up with their throats slit. Vivian Silver was a friend, a
Yeah,
customer of ours. She was the biggest peacenik, the biggest humanitarian that you've ever could ever hope
I'm
to
sure.
meet. And
Right.
as were most of those people living down in the South, they were a bunch of, you know, uh, stern leftists who believed
Right.
that as long as we treat them
I,
in the most
Listen,
human way,
you're not
yeah.
telling what
I'm not
I
letting you
myself.
talk. Okay, you go ahead. Sorry.
No, you can.
Go ahead.
But I'm adding, contributing to your point by saying that I myself am the biggest tree hugger out there, and
Yeah.
I was tortured over a period of years by these horrible fucking Muslims. So to talk about Vivian Silver is
Yeah.
is to bring up a scenario that
Unnecessary.
I know well.
You're right.
Well,
Right.
I just understand what happens. I know what
Yeah.
it is to be to misunderestimate, as George Bush used to say, the
Misunderstood.
people with whom one lives, are one's neighbors.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Listen, I know,
Okay.
I understand Vivian Silver's dreams and hopes and aspirations, and I also understand her mistakes. Yes.
Okay. So let's
But
speak.
anyway,
Let's go to
you're
a
saying,
concrete
you're saying,
suggestion about how do you communicate and you can't impose humanity on somebody aside from you know uh, you know bringing them into like communist China sort of re-education, like you capture them and put them into prison and re-educate them
That does kind of
to
work.
civilization, which is a bit of a contradiction, right? So we're not communist China. We don't have any plans to do that. And it's a contradiction in terms. How do you put someone into into a concentration camp to educate them about liberal humanity? So what practically would you think is a you were in their prison, you saw them up close, you saw the human side of them, and I think you give yourself a certain amount of credit, and maybe rightfully so, at having identified the humane elements in your torturers, and by virtue of having and recognized them and
Well,
giving them credit, you managed maybe to grow them somehow, or
no,
um,
no, I had no
no,
influence on them. I had no
no
influence on
influence.
them. But
Okay,
I mean,
so
no, they didn't say, "Oh, gee, this
okay,
nice prisoner. He seems to have some
yes.
silly ideas.
So
Let's follow
what do
him
you
instead of
suggest?
our."
What do you
Yeah.
what is? Do you have a concrete suggestion? I know you say violence breeds violence, but I mean there is a Jewish thing. I'm not a great scholar of this, but there's a Jewish thing that if somebody's coming to kill you, that you're not privileged but obliged to kill them first. And I think this is a clear case of that. And I
Okay.
don't
Well,
know how you could communicate your humanity to, aside from giving them evacuating your people from their territory, giving them full choice of who to elect, holding democratic elections where they elected Hamas, a terrorist organization, and let Hamas let Hamas enable UNRWA, the UN refugee for Palestinians, to educate them to kill Jews and to destroy Israel, and to build tunnels, but not to build shelters. Like what? What? I mean, Israel was pretty stupid, I think, to have done that, and
yes.
unbelievably stupid, and
Well, they just
unbelievably.
don't understand the people that they're living next to. They clearly have no notion.
You
They're
know what?
only,
I find it impossible. I find it impossible to believe. I mean, you have to believe it, because either you believe that it's a conspiracy that Israel, you know,
yeah.
uh, did to enable, kind of. I think this is one of the things that Rabin said, like, give them their own territory. So once they have their own nation, we can stomp on them when they attack us. Uh, and maybe you think that maybe that's really what happened, because it's hard to believe that Israel, with this supposedly high level of intelligence and sophisticated monitoring of what's going on, 10 miles from here, or 10 miles from the border of, or even less, 2 to 20 miles from the border of Israel, that they managed to build 300 miles of tunnels and managed to educate their entire population of children to want to kill Jews, and that Israel just, we just thought they really wanted to live peacefully next to us. Like, it does not ring true. Uh, so I but that's the illusion that they promulgated. Israel pretended that that they believed that that's what they wanted, that they just wanted. Um,
I thought
they
Israel was.
believed. Yeah, right.
They believed in a mowing the lawn philosophy.
No, no, but it wasn't even mowing the lawn, because that's just some stupid expression of going down and controlling things, which is pretty dumb. Because if you give somebody $6 billion and they only take half of that to enrich their leaders, and the other half of that they invest conspicuously in building tunnels and educating their children, like that's just not. Can you please? Um, that's just
So
not a
annoying
real
you.
what. So uh, anyways, I'm getting distracted, but your friend Betzalel keeps holding up signs for me to speak less and listen
Tell,
more. So,
tell them to
uh,
leave the room.
what?
Well,
Don't
listen,
leave the room,
listen. It's
Betzalel.
your podcast. You can do what you like. It's your
Right,
podcast,
exactly.
right?
That's right. So,
You're,
and I'm
you're allowed
here
to
to,
do what you
this
want.
is like, I'm trying to get educated here, and
I don't
the
know about that.
education I'm no, I want to. I'm telling you what I know, and I'm trying to figure out what makes sense. and none of this makes sense. I mean,
Yeah,
it
I'm
doesn't
sure
make
that the
sense.
ideas I have, I suggest, I'm sure that the ideas that I have for peace, first of all, they
Yeah.
are, they, I don't think you're going to find them practical, and perhaps they aren't practical. I mean, no, they aren't practical.
Then
Um,
what's the point? If they're not practical, what's the point? That's it by definition. Then they're not a plan for peace. If they're not practical,
yeah,
it's
no,
like,
that's true.
you know, how
I,
how do you? Oh, what's your recipe for vegan hot dogs? You have to get seitan, but
okay,
I don't have any
okay.
seitan.
Listen, yeah,
So
it has to
yeah.
be, it has to be a day by hour
Okay, so
process. I mean,
start with the first
and
hour. What's the
the
first hour?
the
We're in the
first
first hour right
ceasefire,
now. You're in
ceasefire,
control of this universe. What do you suggest that
cease-
your
ceasefire,
your your people do?
ceasefire.
Ceasefire.
Get the
Okay, and
hostages
then
out, for God's sakes. Get the
oh, but
hostages
they're
out.
not giving. They're not. They're we offered ceasefire for hostages. They're not willing to do it. They want to also
No, that's
release
just silly.
what?
Did can I ask you?
Okay, what
Was
what
there any
happens after
point?
that? Yeah.
May I ask you? Was there
Yes.
any point at which you believed that the Hamas people would accept a ceasefire in exchange for hostages?
No. They never.
Good.
Of course, they
Did
wouldn't.
anyone believe that?
They wouldn't because they're
Did
raping
anyone
these
believe that?
women and they're killing these people, and they want 10,000. They want every security
Right.
prisoner
Okay.
with blood on their
Anyway,
hands to be released. They
in any case,
they do not want an equation
right.
that equals something. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well,
Yeah.
well, I say get the hostages out,
Right.
and I say ceasefire, and you
For
reply,
how long?
um, you reply that will never get the hostages out, and I say
No, let's say
that
okay.
that's
Let's do the mind
I
experiment
think
and say that it will get the hostages out. Okay,
no, it
let's say
won't.
that they.
There's no universe in which a ceasefire brings the hostages home. It is a first
You
step,
don't.
but it is not by any means the last step. So I
Okay.
say take the first step, and then take the next
The,
step, and then next step,
okay,
and the
what's the
next step
next step?
after that.
Okay, so
The next
but
step,
let's say, go ahead. What's the
yeah,
next step
well, I
after
mean,
the ceasefire?
we
We
have
had a
a number
ceasefire
of,
on October 6th, right? Right?
yeah, they weren't happy
Okay,
with
so
that,
we
evidently.
tried that. What happened? Yeah, they invaded.
Well, yeah, the
So
situation now
why
is
would you
that
suggest going back to that square one?
I don't suggest going back to that square one. I
You're saying
suggest
the
getting the hostages
ceasefire.
out.
Okay, that's. I mean, I don't like these. There's 100 and something live hostages and maybe another 100
Yeah,
dead hostages. So uh, let's say that I mean maybe this is jumping to the
they have,
another subject, but let's say that we release another thousand like we did for Gilad Shalit. We release a
mm,
thousand of their uh, dyed in the wool jihadists, and
mm,
they come back and they do another bigger one. Like you said, it's not going to be 3,000, it's going to be 10,000, and it's not going to be on one border, it's going to be on five borders. um, so what have you gained by releasing 100 hostages, aside from you've gotten you've gotten 100 hostages back, which is
well,
worth a lot,
well,
and
clearly,
you've gotten the Israeli public a lot happier, but you're still
it
back to
seems to
square
me
one
that
in the sense of a ceasefire with people
it
who
seems to me
don't
that
who want to kill
if
you. Yeah,
you release 1,000 terrorists from the prisons,
yeah.
um, it's up to Israel to make sure that they cannot commit the crimes that are probably dancing in their heads.
How do you do that?
I would, I think that the security services have ways to harden the borders and identify those individuals. And I think
We
that
we tr- we,
if they don't, hmm,
we tried to do
they
that. We
must.
tried. But they don't. The Israel is, unfortunately, for better or for worse, is for all their reputation of having a hard army and all of that, and conducting themselves brutally towards the Palestinians. The opposite is true, and
Well, maybe.
the opposite is true, and they continue to employ up until this October 7th, and to this day, they continue to employ Palestinians. They built a wall when there was the Intifadas, and they were blowing themselves up every other day, and the knife
It,
Intifada, where they were murdering people in the streets every other day.
it sounds to
They
me.
built a they
Can I
built a
interrupt?
wall. What? They built a wall,
Can,
and they don't have the
pardon,
ability. You think of the Jews and the Israelis as some sort of magical, omnipotent,
no,
people who have the ability
what
to
the
do
guy
what
think that?
nobody
I
else can
certainly
do.
don't. No, no, I don't
It
have
sounds
any
like
such
it.
illusions.
I think what I understood you to say is that we could release 1,000 dyed-in-the-wool terrorists who've already killed people,
Yeah,
on
I don't
behalf
think
of Jihad,
this requires
and
any
some
special. No,
what's that?
well, yeah, um, I, I don't think that this requires any special mastery or to control these people. Anyway, listen, the fact of the matter is that on your border you have a large number of homicidal and suicidal maniacs or
Yeah,
potential maniacs, and your personal safety obviously depends on defending yourself from this population of maniacs. Um, and I hope and trust that somebody will be capable of doing this. Listen, you're alive. They're not in
I don't.
your. They're not coming
Yeah,
today.
not yet.
They didn't come yesterday.
Yeah, but you know what they say, that what some of the analysts have said, and probably they know what they're talking about, is that Hamas is, they use the word, an order of magnitude less threatening than Hezbollah, and certainly of Iran, and they're all on the same Iranian program, and they have apparently 150,000 rockets, which, for some
Yeah.
reason, Israel is
Uh,
letting them hold on to. Yeah. So I don't,
well, all the more
I
reason
don't.
for.
Yeah. What? I don't think we're.
I mean,
I don't. Nobody
we can
feels safe
discuss.
here. What?
Right. We can discuss the nature of the threat that you are confronted with at the moment, but I think however endangered and threatened you feel at the moment, the hostages themselves are more threatened. They literally have knives at their throats at this moment. I don't think
Hmm.
there can be any doubt about that. And every
Okay.
time a bomb falls, the knife just
It's
their
closer to
lives
their throat.
are
Yeah.
hanging by a thread, the most delicate thread. So I think, in my opinion, having been there myself, I really believe that the compassionate and appropriate response is for the entire world to get together and to figure out what is required to release these people and then to accomplish that. I don't.
Yeah.
To say
I
that.
don't. Yeah. Hmm.
Let me just finish my thought.
Go ahead. Go
To
ahead,
say that,
please.
yeah, some of these people will be released, and all of those who opposed measures that led to their release, um, all of those people who said no, we need to have we need to take a harder line with Hamas. I hope that the hostages will come and confront those people and say, you would have had me killed, and here I am alive, and you would have had me killed for what? Well, you gave up on me, and I was needing you, and where were you? So that's what I say to people who took that line with me, and I despise those people. I always will, and I
Yeah.
really believe that they are cruel and inhumane and have no imagination, and they would have had me killed for nothing, for no
Well.
reason, because they can't figure out
Yeah.
a way
The
to
different.
come to a solution with an
Yeah.
Arab. By the way,
Right.
the like the it is possible to negotiate with these people. I know you think that it's difficult, but you walk into
Yeah.
a rug merchant shop. He says, "I will not let my rug go for less than 1,000 shekels," and a half hour later, you walk out having paid 950 shekels.
Right.
It just happens. So
Yeah.
there needs to be some creative solution, problem solving, and uh,
Okay.
and don't give
But
up on your fellow citizens because they need you.
yeah, don't give up on the hostages, you're saying,
That's right.
or on
They
the
need you. They're
Palestinians.
counting on you
Yeah.
to root for
But
them and to
you know
encourage.
what? Hmm. But here's the thing: if it's a if the Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran are clear and present dangers, which anybody would be foolish to say they're not, and they're not threatening 100 people. it's not this. It's the situation. The analog of the situation would be if you were being held there, and New York City. I mean, to exaggerate, they were threatening to bomb New York City, and then you had to decide: is your life worth
No,
the life
in
of
that case, yeah, no. If that were the case, then I say I die and let the. I
right,
came to that.
right?
Listen, I was in that situation, a similar situation. I really believe that I ought to die in order to save other people. I had
Yeah,
no
except who
that
were you going to
moral
save?
calculus.
Yeah, who would you
I
have
yeah,
saved
if
by dying?
I felt that the prison in which I was being held was a like a slaughter factory, a slaughterhouse, something like Auschwitz. And as a occasional worker or certainly an inhabitant of this slaughterhouse, I felt it might save people if the slaughterhouse were bombed. Now, I didn't
Okay,
want so for this reason I rooted for the airplanes in the sky. The same way that some Holocaust victims of the Holocaust wanted Auschwitz to be bombed into out of existence, even though they knew that would
right.
mean their own death. For me,
Yeah,
there was no ethical it was not an complicated decision to to,
right.
to
Okay,
to feel this anyway. Yeah, there was never a moment in which appeasing my hostage takers um, would have saved some larger quantity of people. And if
right.
there had been, I would have said, no, don't kill me and
Well,
let other
that
people survive.
right, but that's exactly what the situation could be here. I mean, that's the
Uh,
argument
Could be, yes,
for.
but it's not that clear. It's
It's
not as
pretty
if
clear. I
you
mean,
let the all right. Well, if it is,
it's pretty clear. It's pretty clear because I mean, I'll just lay out the little bit that I know. Rafa is, it seems, most likely where these people are being held.
wait, hey,
And
wait, hey, no,
what? No, you don't think?
no,
Oh, whatever.
no,
I mean, they're being held somewhere, and
yes,
the and they're being held. Let me just finish the thought. They're being held somewhere. Hamas are the people who are holding them. Hamas has, um, let's say, by Netanyahu's description, 2/3 or 3/4 of its military might has been taken apart, and they still have a quarter of it entirely intact and well organized, and they maybe even a lot more than that. Who knows? So if they have that many people intact, and then let's say that means I don't know, 8,000 Hamasniks still in a highly organized military thing, and if he says there's just that many number, like why do we keep losing people in the north if it's only in the south? So I kind of really doubt that. Um,
do you realize that they can reconstitute their whatever force that they
exactly,
tomorrow?
they can do what Jordan did, and what and I was like, this is part of the argument about the kind of the weakness and softness of the Israeli military. When Jordan was set up to be a Palestinian state and had an 80% majority of Palestinians, and King Abdullah wanted to maintain control, he brought in mercenaries from Iraq and a general from Iraq who did what's called Black Friday, I believe it's called. They slaughtered 20,000 Palestinians, and the Palestinians got the idea that, well, we'll let Abdullah keep his throne, and we'll just kind of be here as as demis, as second-class citizens. And Israel has never had the option of doing that kind of a slaughter there. When they conduct their war in Gaza, the statistics are something like 2 to 1 of civilians to military people, whereas the American army and other armies that conducted um, wars in similar sorts of circumstances, the ratio is like 9 to 1. Israel never had the option because they're a bunch of Jews to slaughter a bunch of people, and they never had the option of putting people into, yeah. So
You
it's but so the point is that even if we release them and they reconstitute, as you say, um, then what have we gained? We've gained 100 people, and we're gonna lose, 10,000 people. We lost 1,000 in one day, and if they do it in a larger way, we're going to lose 10,000 in one day. And then where are
Right.
we? So,
Well, it
I,
sounds to me as though you have
yeah,
you, it sounds to me as though you are of the Hannibal Lecter. Um, you have the you have the understanding of the world that Hannibal has, which is that
which
you have
which
a
is
kind of irreducible wickedness circulating in the world around you, and it needs to be acknowledged first of all, and it cannot be
right,
psychologized as Agent Starling would. It's just
right,
an element in the world in which you live, and
right.
it's kind of irreducible. So let's confront it.
What do you
And
say? So you have no
Hannibal's philosophy.
suggestion. You have no suggestion. Your suggestion is take the proximate solution of releasing 100 hostages and hope for the best.
Um, I mean, I think there has to be. You have to diffuse this threat in a thousand different ways. I mean,
But you've only
I
named
think the whole
one.
world. It's
You've only named one. You've named
one,
the whole world. The whole world, just as I understand, the UNRWA, who's been shamelessly educating young people to be killers of Jews and Israelis and take over Israel, and shamelessly putting Hamas things under their facilities, and shamelessly keeping hostages in their own houses, that they're getting nominated for a Nobel Prize. So I don't think the world is in any position to give any sort of moral any solution at all. It sounds like they're as murderous as the people who they're supporting. And
wait,
yeah, anyways,
I'm not sure I understand.
it doesn't sound like what.
Who, I'm not sure I understand what you're saying. Who's as murderous as
What I'm
whom?
saying is that you said, "Oh, the world should get together and figure out a solution," and I'm saying
I
that
mean,
yeah,
yes. Well, if
and
I
I'm just
think that
saying that
there are,
the world has not shown any sort of that it has any sort of a moral compass in judging this affair, and and I think it's going in one direction, and I think
which is
which is what's happening in London, that they're backing down to jihad, they're backing down to Islamification, and because there's more of them than there are of us, and they're reproducing more quickly than we are, so we might as well give up and give in and
yeah. I
resign.
mean,
They had a couple
no,
of their
okay.
yeah
Well, Hannibal's solution is this: you have to be an apex predator. And you
yeah.
have to you, you have to he 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 just thinks that you have to consume the agent starlings of the world. You have to gobble them up, uh,
No, so
and
let's say the other
prey
question.
on whoever you can.
What what
Prey
I
on
don't
whoever
think
you
you've
can.
given. I can't hear. Say what you're saying again.
It's just this notion that we're dealing with an evil element, that
Well,
cannot be appeased and that always wants to slaughter and has nature is red in tooth and claw, and they're coming for you, and you got to kill them before they kill you.
but
Seems like that's
you're
what you're
just
saying.
you're opposing. You're saying that that's not the case, but you're
Yes,
not
no, I
coming
don't
up
believe
with
that's
any
this.
sort of and I'm saying that that's exactly the kind of um, thing that Israel has avoided doing. Israel has avoided
Well, I know that.
demonizing Hamas
Well,
and
anyway, okay,
demonizing the
you want
Palestinians. Yeah.
some specific steps?
What?
Well, as uh, some specific steps, like what I would do to to diffuse the threat. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that particularly the young men need to sense that there is a future for themselves outside of the jihad, that does not involve the houris and death and violence. And
Okay.
having known many suicide bombers myself, I know them. I knew them. I continue to know them since we're still in touch. But I know that they are so deeply brainwashed at the moment that if you say to them, "Hey, Hamid, go over to that corner and here's a suicide belt and blow yourself up and take all those women and children with you, some of whom may well be Muslims," they would do that in a heartbeat. And yet they are so shallowly brainwashed that if you gave Hamid an iPhone and a Hyundai Sonata, perhaps, forget an iPhone, and a good internet
Yeah.
connection, a little apartment in Turkey, he would prefer that to the virgins in paradise. So, in my view, the first way to diffuse the threat is to offer these young men like a scholarship at a nice boarding school in Switzerland, and
Yeah.
some rock
That's
climbing,
not. Yeah.
outward bound,
Outward Bound.
and yeah. I mean,
I did
we
Outward
have
Bound.
enough. Did you?
Yeah.
Where?
I did
Where was
in
it?
Sierras in California, in the
Right
Sierras
on.
when I was
Did it help you at all?
in.
Did it change your attitude? For a little while, it
Uh,
probably did.
yeah, I did. I mean, I got strong,
Yeah.
and
You got in touch with nature. You listen to
what's
the
that?
birds. You got in touch
No,
with nature.
I didn't real. I
Yes.
mean, the
There
closest.
was probably
Yeah,
some
I
hot
mean, yeah.
chicks on
I
the.
mean, what? It was more in
There
touch
were
with my
probably a lot
own
of.
nature. More in
Okay,
touch with my
great.
own nature.
Yes.
'Cause- yeah,
Right.
which is
And also
like
along on
walking
the
on what?
along with on the outward bound trip with you, hopefully there was a number of 16-year-old very hot chicks from Miami. Or
No, no,
no?
no, 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 no.
Oh, that's
It was all
interesting.
20.
Well,
It
the
was all
leaders.
20 and 20 plus year olds, and they
Okay.
were,
Well,
and one of them had just lost his father, and the big test that we had, they were supposedly they were going to teach us, how to survive in the wild, but all they did
oh,
was they put us near a water source and gave us like 5 matches, and
yeah.
said they would like visit us once a day, and they didn't tell us what herbs were edible or anything. They
That was
told us
your
how to
whole
build a
outward bound
fire.
trip? That sounds like very low budget outward bound.
No, no, that was just 3 days. The whole thing lasted like 3 weeks, and
Oh,
we did
why? Because
hiking.
why did you do
Yeah.
this?
What?
Why did you go on this
Oh,
outward bound trip?
because it was like camping, outdoor camping,
You
mountain
wanted to.
climbing, rock climbing. What?
You were interested in. You were interested in all these things.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, if and for a long time afterwards, I like tried to go off alone into the, that what's that book where the guy,
California
I
Smith.
think it's called Alone, where the guy goes to Alaska and tries to, I
Yeah,
was like a
no.
hippie
Into the wild.
subsistence farmer
Into the
kind of
wild.
guy. What? You know,
Into the wild.
into the wild, exactly. So, I mean, that
You
was
wanted
the
to be Chris
ideal.
McCandless.
What's
You wanted to
that?
be Chris McCandless. The kid's name was Chris McCandless.
Oh, Chris McCandless. Like, yeah, but right. That was kind of one of the ideals. The ideal was, I mean,
I know.
the first
Sounds
time
like
I
a good
dropped
idea.
out of college was, oh, I'm going to go with my girlfriend to Oregon and do subsistence farming. That
It's
was like
beautiful.
that's the basic thing. And now I'm doing farming here. I have a community garden which I started, and I
Hmm.
harvest like pounds and pounds of kale and
Wow.
chard and broccoli and stuff like that. And my wife says, "Stop
So,
growing that stuff. I won't. I only eat lettuce." So and
so
that
she
I just
doesn't like
spent.
this.
She doesn't like that
Too
stuff.
much
So I just
kale.
spent two
Mm.
hours like washing that stuff today and making a. I'm going to make some of it into protein powder and some of it into.
If,
I
if
make
you
like
rub the
patties and
kale,
stuff.
you rub the kale, especially if you harvest it early, but you rub the kale with
Yeah.
olive oil and
Right.
you kind of rub it in your hands as you're washing it. It
Right.
softens it up. It makes it less.
Right. Less brittle. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, so the
Anyway,
outward bound,
so,
we, you know, I actually had a
okay,
dream,
yes,
like kind of, yeah. Go ahead. We'll get back to the subject.
okay,
But
yeah.
you
What?
send,
How
you're
much
saying
longer
send them
are
to
we doing
outward
this?
bound, send them to outward bound.
Yes.
But I think that's exactly, I mean, that's hopefully in the highest hopes, that is the hope of the Israeli government. What they would like to do is get rid of a terrorist based government. They would like to impose some sort of a like a technocrat
Yeah.
civilized government, which
But
would
the Arabs are not going to listen to what anybody in Israel tells them to do. Whatever you tell them to do, they're going to do the opposite. If you
well
have 10
that's
Arabs right
yeah
now,
so yeah so what
they
yeah yeah so
however,
I think
if
you
you
have
take them
to
to Switzerland
take them
and
to
you give them the
Switzerland.
outward bound course,
I
yeah,
don't think
and you
Switzerland
take them.
wants. Well, that's a big part of the problem is that not only does
That's why I say the
Switzerland
whole
not want
world.
them,
That's why I say
not
the
only
whole world has to be involved. The whole world has
exactly,
to be involved
but
because
there's a
there is
basic
a large
problem.
population of dangerous young men in Gaza at the moment,
Right.
and to find homes and places for them, and to give them proper nourishment so that they
Right.
do not become jihadis.
That's a
They
great
do
idea.
need Israel to get involved,
That's a great
and
idea. That's in
that's
fact, yeah, that's in fact what in Talmudic times they didn't have prisons for for people. They would put them in families, and the families would basically like treat them like something like a Jewish slave, and and educate them into a positive lifestyle. But the problem is that not only do like Poland said, guess what? We have zero terrorism. Why do you think that is? Because we haven't let any Muslims into the country. Which is not
yeah. They
exactly
have
true,
Muslims in
but
Poland.
yeah, what? Yeah, they have other
They
problems,
have Muslims.
and
They
they
have
do. I
Muslims
know,
in
but
Poland all over the
this
place.
is just what the prime minister or somebody said. Um, but the fact is that there's 22 Arabic Muslim states and 55 Muslim states around the world, and how many of them, including the neighbors,
They're all
uh,
poor. Fuck
Jordan
them. They're all
and
poor.
Egypt? What?
They
How
are
many?
all poor. They don't need more poor people. Give these
No,
kids to them.
no. Qatar is
Well,
not poor. Saudi Arabia
okay,
is not
Qatar
poor.
is too small.
Uh,
It's too small.
it's too
They
small.
don't. They don't.
It's
That's right.
it's oh
They're
yeah.
too. Forget about them. What about
No, forget about the rich
Uruguay?
ones, right? So, which rich countries would like the responsibility of re-educating a horde of
Not a
former
horde. Not a
terrorists?
horde.
What? A horde.
I mean,
I mean,
not a
you're
horde.
talking about people who were somehow
How
got
many,
genocided from being 150,000 and now are 7 million or something, or no, 3 million, whatever it is. That's Jewish genocide. Where they multiply by 5 times. That's what that we call that Jewish genocide. So it's what 3 million in Gaza
yeah, but
and two
that includes
million
babies and
in
women
the
and
West Bank.
children and blah blah blah.
And
I'm
I
talking
thought we
about
were
the
doing genocide, so like what we have such a Jewish style of genocide. Like have some chicken soup while we kill you. Like grow 5 times, and we'll call it genocide. Anyways, um, so the point is that and the funniest one. I mean, not funny at all, of course, is King Abdullah, Hussein, like when asked like why are you guys not, I thought like that was designated by Britain as the Palestinian state of Jordan, like why do you not want any of these people, like and he was like twitching, his eyes were twitching all over the place. He said, well, it's because it's not our problem. And that's basically the approach of everybody. Why did none of the countries in the world want to take Jews after World War II?
yeah, it was a
What?
great crime that a stain on humanity um, is what happened to the Jews before the Holocaust and during and after.
Right, right,
You
and
know that
after,
book,
right.
While 6 Million Died by Arthur Morse?
I've heard of it. I haven't read it. Yeah.
Okay, well, this tells the
Right.
story of the world's indifference. Something similar is occurring right now. I quite agree with you. Listen,
Yeah.
can you just tell me, are we moving towards a,
Yeah. Let's move towards the book.
where are we? We
Batzalel
don't have
is
to move
right.
towards the book. I have
Let's
no
talk about the
interest in
book.
moving towards the book.
Oh,
I
okay.
just want to know how, what is our schedule for, how long does this go on?
It doesn't have any sort of time frame. I mean, as long as we have patience for it and interest in it, I would ask
Well,
you
yeah,
just some questions, that from the book, if you don't mind, and
you don't
then
really.
what?
I do not mean to. I just mean to. I have no interest in discussing this book. It's something I wrote ages ago, and it's
Oh,
beyond me, behind me,
yeah.
and I don't need to discuss it at all or anything. I'm
Okay.
happy to discuss outward. I just want to know how much longer are we talking, because I got all these other crap I got to do this
Okay. So we can say, let's say another 15 minutes.
morning. Okay, great.
Okay. Okay.
Can I go take a quick pee? I really need to pee.
Please. Yeah. Sure.
Okay, sorry.
Go for it.
I'm almost there. Hold on.
Okay, take your time.
One sec. All right, I'm back.
Okay.
Yep. Please
So
don't feel as though you have to discuss my book with me. I have.
okay.
This is your podcast. You determined the agenda,
Right.
and it is.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
agreed to be on it without any
Okay,
preconditions.
preconditions. Right. Okay, great. So the so um the next, I mean, like, what I would, I'm actually more interested in finding a practical solution to the problem. And like you said, if you tell the Palestinians what to do, they'll do the opposite. That sounds right.
Yeah.
And also, like, what I always do whenever I meet a Palestinian, or whatever, an Arab, an Israeli Arab, I say, like, is there an example of a democratic Arab society? And they're like, no. Like, do you feel like you have any democratically oriented leaders, like, who are not basically first and foremost thieves among your leaders? And they say, like, no. I like, what model would you like to have for your own state? And they're like, so
What's
that's
wrong with the
that's kind of the
caliphate?
problem. What?
Why do they need
Cal-
democracy? I say, what's wrong with the caliphate? Why do they need democracy?
exactly, exactly, right. So, but the point is, you
A
have to
caliphate
you
isn't
have to
necessarily bad. It doesn't. A caliphate does
right,
not imply slaughtering and
jihad,
torture. It can be just.
right, right. So that, I think that sounds right. I mean, that's this guy who I seem to trust, this guy Kedar. That's exactly what he suggested. He suggested dividing Gaza and the West Bank into like 8 caliphates. I don't know how you manage them, but you divide them up into families. He claims that Qatar and Saudi Arabia and all the successful Arab societies are basically one family, and the ones that are many families are complete chaos, like
Yemen,
Lebanon and Jordan and Egypt.
Yemen,
You know, Yemen, yeah.
and
So,
Yemen.
so that's exactly what he suggests. So maybe that is the right answer, is to divide into
That's a different
caliphates, and
question.
they,
You're
yeah,
talking about the so-called morning after question, like what happens next, or
yeah,
who's
yeah,
going to govern Gaza. Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, uh, I don't find that question particularly. I think that if it's a that the Arab countries of the world should certainly get
yeah,
involved, and they should
yeah,
certainly they have to get involved. But the Israelis are going to say, "Hey, you dumb Arabs, we don't trust how you're governing Gaza. We don't trust that you're not building more tunnels and creating more jihad." And
yeah, yeah.
so so
Well, they did
there's a
trust them in the
problem.
past, apparently. They trusted them to set up the Palestinian Authority. That ended up with what they
Yeah.
call it, a
So the real solution,
kleptocracy.
the
Yeah,
real solution is for Israel to take a greater interest in the psychology of young men in that part of the world. They have to get to know them as I did. I brush my teeth with these men. No, they don't brush their teeth. Sorry. Um, I slept in the same room with them. I
yeah,
memorized the Quran. You've got to go deep, and if you want to live there, because why is this? Because they have the knife at your throat, and you have no choice but to get to know these people, and perhaps even to you know to also they should all go on a year of outward bound in Switzerland or Argentina or some other nice place, and
but yeah,
the
it reminds me that
true
there was
moral
a
leadership in the
Nazi.
world.
Yeah, what?
Okay, the
There was
Nazis adored they had a cult of the out of doors, and it made things worse. But this was
right.
because they went among themselves, and that was the problem. It was like the more they went and worshipped the oak tree, the Eichenbaum, the more
Really,
dangerous they became.
right.
Yeah, because they had these fantasies of themselves as a, as like the Eichenbaum.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, so yeah, they need to get out of their world and go to a different world, and they should not be together. They should be surrounded by Swiss people, and they'll be brilliant and beautiful and lovely.
Okay, but
But who's going to? You said
you
this is
gotta think of a
impractical.
practical
It's
way. Yeah.
yeah, it is not. It is not inconceivable that the universities of the West can make an effort to open their doors to more young men from Palestine. I don't fucking care if they can't speak English. I've been busting my hump
Yeah.
to get to get universities in the West to look after some of the victims of the violence all over the Middle East, and they all say fuck off. They say give us this much money for tuition, take an English test, and these people cannot pass any of this shit. They don't have the money for this. So
Yeah.
what?
But anyways,
We need if we
the
want
also
peace. If
but the
we
University of the
it's
West,
not
they're
just,
just going to continue to be indoctrinated in this. You know, they're so pro Hamas. They're just going to be. It's like they're just going to have
all
more of
right.
the
Well
same.
then, it would be unfortunate if the the kind of indoctrination that one gets at Columbia or Dartmouth College, which I happen to live next door to, is so sweet and gentle and it's like a
Not
little puff of
anymore.
cotton candy in
Not
comparison
not
to
not
the
not in
indoctrination one
Columbia.
gets in Aleppo.
Yeah. In what?
Like
Compared to,
it's
oh, right.
in Aleppo,
But
they have a serious kind of indoctrination that does produce a suicide bomber. At Columbia University, it produces an objectionable freshman who is concerned about her pronouns. She's not going to come and she's unlikely to slaughter you
anyways,
with her
I just don't think that
pronouns.
that doesn't sound like it has the ring of practicality. So
What I'm saying
I
is, what
yeah,
I mean by this is that there are there Palestinian society. There are counterparts across the world for every position occupied by every young person in Palestinian society. There are young kids that love to play football. There are young kids that are interested in video technology, computer technology, and so all of the counterparts all across we need to rescue. You're asking for some kind of imaginable, envisionable solution. I'm saying that we need just as I'm saying that everybody has to assume some degree of moral responsibility for
hmm,
the safety of Israel and the well-being of these Palestinian people. We don't like to see 30,000 people killed in Gaza. We don't like to
right,
see however many were killed on October 7th in Israel. So we all have to assume some degree of responsibility, whether we be a
right,
university or a soccer team or we run a restaurant, whatever it is,
yeah,
we should engage.
yeah,
And how do we do that? We need to have the leadership of the world lead the way by by exerting pressure on all those governments that could do more and are doing less at the moment, like
yeah.
Argentina and Switzerland.
Well, I just don't can't imagine that anybody's going to want to take more than you can take one here, one there. Like it reminds me what you're saying because, and it's a similar situation in southern Italy, which is also managed and run by caliphates of El
Yeah,
Familia, the
yeah.
mafia,
It's a shame
which is
honor
a very
society.
what's that?
A shame
Yeah,
honor
so
society.
shame on our society. So it's very similar to that. So the only solution that they've found in Naples and the South in Sicily is um, when the wives are willing to kidnap their kids and bring them to the north, they give them like a protected identity and stuff so that they won't become mafia members. But that's like, you can take one person out, but you can't take 50,000. You have to basically, and this is a basic thing that I think Israel has to do. I don't think it has a choice. Israel, right now, because of their soft, liberal bent, lets Arabs in East Jerusalem and in the West Bank study, the kids study from books that demonize Israel and Jews. And, and as long as Hamas and UNRWA continue to teach kids that their goal in life is to die as a martyr and to kill Jews and Israelis, it's a lost cause. I mean, you can take, because you're not going
Yeah.
to, each country is not going to take out 10,000 people because they're all terrified. What was the Iraqi war was started by people who wanted to get Palestinians out of their country. And
Can,
Iraq, I mean, and
do you believe?
Lebanon,
Yeah.
uh,
Do you believe
in
that
Lebanon,
if you took
yeah, go ahead.
an instructional manual of the worst kind that said Jews are horrible vermin and lice and
Yeah,
they must
yeah,
be
yeah,
exterminated, and you
yeah,
use all of these textbooks such such as we and the cartoons that we see, all this anti-Israel propaganda, and
yeah,
instructed the kids in this, that you
yeah.
yourself could create a suicide bomber with that material? No.
100%. No, if
The
you
kid,
had
the
if
kid
you
is
had
like,
your family
I
behind it,
want
if you had your
to.
family and
I
your
mean,
uncles and your aunts and your cousins behind it, absolutely. If that's what they
I
practice,
don't think it's
they do. Yeah, they show. I mean, I don't know if you've seen Fauda. Have
more
you watched
complicated than
Fauda?
that.
Yeah. So, like
That
even
was
in
I have watched that. I have watched that, and I love all the chicks on it, but I do
yeah.
not believe a word of it. It is
Okay, but the
like
one thing you can believe, there's one tiny little vignette where a little kid comes and gets to practice killing a Jew, or pretend killing a Jew, and that's something that
you
you
know,
can see in tons of YouTube videos where these kids are practicing, like that's their Halloween, or their Christmas pageant is a killing a Jew pageant. So absolutely, if you and your
yeah. But
family,
killing a Jew involves
yeah,
suicide. They all know that. They
what's
know
that?
that they're going to get killed. They know that if to kill a Jew, they will themselves get killed.
Yeah,
And to yeah,
and they
so
welcome that.
they
Yeah.
to produce somebody who welcomes that, it is not as natural as you assume it to be. You cannot just stand in front of a classroom with the textbook and say, "You see, there's
Yeah,
paradise, and here come the virgins, and if you die, there you go." The kids will say, "Fuck off."
but
I don't believe that
look, they
nonsense.
they managed to do it. I mean, these people the 3,000, which you claim could have been 30,000, let's say, and rightfully so, because it's not the Palestinian civilians are not civilians. They're people who were indoctrinated for 20 years to want to kill Jews and to die a martyr. So if it's not just the schools, but it's also the cousins and the sisters and the brothers and the uncles and the aunts and the grandfathers telling you that that's the honorable thing to do. I'm
Eh,
sure if I were
even then,
raised in that situation, I think all of us would have become, willful martyrs and murderers.
no, no,
I,
no.
I don't
You know,
think so.
in World
You
War
don't think
One,
so?
I don't know. No, in World War One, there was the British authorities eventually discovered that they had a problem in their army because although these young men proclaimed that they were willing to go off and kill the Huns, when it came down to it, they were willing to leap out of the trenches and run into the enemy trench, but they weren't. Sorry, sorry.
Sorry.
They often were killed before they discharged their arms, and the British government knew this because they found all these loaded rifles, next to the dead bodies. So they had to figure out a way to convince these people to kill, like to yes die, but they had an instinctual urge not to kill,
Right.
and
As did the
this has to be
Nazis.
overcome.
As did
No,
the
I'm talking about
Nazis.
World War One.
I know, but I'm saying,
Oh,
that, yeah, I'm
that
just
you're
saying that.
saying that the Nazis had to develop a program to make their army men more violent, more homicidal than they naturally were.
Not only that, their stories are, from Hitler's willing executioners. The story was that when the Nazis were instructed to go and machine gun the people in the Jews in the Ukraine, um, the
They were reluctant.
Ukrainian the Ukrainians had no problem doing it, but the Nazis had to get super drunk that night, and in order to get over it, and it's said was the reason that the gas chambers were invented because the
Yeah.
Nazis were too,
Well,
yeah.
this this is a slightly different scenario. I brought up the World War One thing because those young
Yeah.
British kids and the young French kids were educated by their entire communities as to go and carry out this slaughter, and yet they wouldn't do it. So you're saying the young
Uh-huh.
Palestinians have been educated by their whole families' communities to carry out their slaughter, and I'm saying that's not going to do it. That's not enough.
You think that the young English kids, I mean, we're talking about a war that, I mean, eventuated over the course of, let's say, a year before they were called up. And you're saying that in that time, they managed to educate uh,
Failed to educate
without
them.
internet and without any sort of great, global communication. They managed to educate a society full of young Brits to want to kill the Huns. You think?
They failed to
Because
do this. I'm saying
I
they
know
failed
that, I know
to
that, but they had no chance to do it. But I'm saying that nowadays, if they would have
after 4
started
years there was
educating them,
considerable hatred. After 4 years,
I think,
considerable hatred. By the time, even after 2 years, considerable hatred of the horrible Germanic
yeah, but
hordes, the Huns,
fine, but you can't.
and
It's a
still
difference.
these young men didn't do it.
It's a difference.
Anyway,
If you,
my general point
yeah,
is that there is a very
takes a longer time.
sophisticated and ingenious um, method that is employed within the jihad to take the young men who want to kill and to turn them into reliable killers, because the will
Okay,
may be there but the execution is not there. I mean, there's really it's a much more formal process than is known, and it's just it's dark. It happens in prisons. It happens during the jihad to bring these people around to the point where they are ready to kill themselves and kill everybody around them, and
you give them speed
and
also when
in
they go
order
to
to,
do the thing. Also, yeah. Go ahead, like the
yeah,
Germans.
and in order to diffuse this threat, you need to get the kids out of that environment, and it's very young kids. It's like kids 5 years old. So
Right.
the kids, those 5 year olds, you don't want to kill a 5 year old. He may be fucking dangerous. I've had 5 year olds, not 5 year olds, but let's 10 year olds
Right.
pointing their guns, and they would have, if only their parents had given them permission to kill.
Yeah.
Boy,
Yeah.
they would have been happy just to pull the trigger. 10 years old. Now,
Yeah.
now, what is the solution for that kid? I don't think it's moral to kill that kid, but it is moral maybe to divorce him from that very toxic environment in which he lives. He has to. I
I
mean,
would love
it's
to
for
see that.
his own good.
I can't picture a way in which any
Well, the reason why
that
we
would be
cannot
practical.
picture it
Yeah.
is the reason why we cannot picture it is because we don't reckon with the nature of the threat. Like we don't understand that it's in the heads of the 10 year olds, but they do. You know, they know that they've got these 10 year olds under their control. They know that much better than anyway. So so
Yeah.
we need to confront what is really going on within those societies. We don't know that, but I do. And if I was the president, if I was the king of the universe, I would begin with the 10 year olds
For sure. I agree with that
and with
fully.
the charlatans, of course. 'Cause
What's that?
not every preacher with the charlatan preachers who influence these young men. And it's not by speaking to them, by the way. It's not like you can just talk at these kids and change their psychology. You've got to make them do shit. This is something that probably the Nazis
Yeah.
learned is that they have to do it, and they have to do it
Right.
again. And it's preferable if when they are doing it, they are scared out of their fucking minds. You know, when they are
Yeah.
doing these, that's how they change the psychologies. They bring the kids into a dark space and they disorient them in time and space, and then they ask them to do shit, and that does eventually take the child of the mom and turns him into a son of the dad. He's a warrior at that point
Right.
because he
Right.
has his they're bringing the psychology of an individual from one place where he's reluctant into another place where he's feeling that he has to defend his his dad, his family, and himself, and he has to, in order to do that, he has got to produce this violence. Anyway, yeah, I mean, this is a very it's a very dangerous thing, and it's
Yeah.
got to be diffused. But in the first place, I believe you can also get the hostages out. That's my own personal feeling.
Halavai.
But also, you got to diffuse the
I
threat.
wish it were true, but I think you have to do it without paying too high a price. Like
Yeah,
if you
you know
continue the
what?
war.
They
Yeah.
asked. sorry, but they asked for of James Foley. The ISIS people asked for $100 million, but they would have taken like maybe a pimped out pickup truck or two.
Yeah, but they
There
don't
you
want
got it.
they have more money than they know what to do with. It's not money
And
that
no,
they
they don't
want.
always have. They don't always have cash, and they don't have places to spend their cash because they can't get there. So listen, there's a lot
Yeah.
of solutions to.
But
They
in
have a
any
lot of
case, whatever
problems.
money you give to their organization, whatever money you give to the Palestinian Authority or to Hamas, and
Well,
this is, it
they
doesn't
do like
get to
to
the
squeeze
people.
it over into.
What?
I agree that I acknowledge the problem that they are interested in guns and pickup trucks, just like the Trump people are here. And
Yep.
if you give them a um, I don't know, a syringe or a bag of medical equipment, the first thought is, how do I change this into a truck or a gun?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they are interested in fungible goods, and they want the guns and the pickup trucks, but get it anyway. We this is we
Anyways,
I think we might be going around in circles. I think we're
yeah, I
almost
think
done.
we're almost done. Yeah. I would just wrap it up by saying, give you some homework, Uh,
Okay,
if I, I'm giving myself homework too. It's like come up with a practical way of, that doesn't involve bringing individual kids to Outward Bound and to Switzerland, but a way in which I think you have to. I mean, the caliphate business. I don't know. I don't know why that is considered to be like a miracle drug. I can't see how it would be if they have the same, if they're allowed to educate their kids any which way.
the
But
danger is the environment. You understand? It's like they're
right,
in within a dome of a very toxic environment. The longer
right,
they're in that environment, the worse the problem becomes. It's just like the German kids and their youth bunds going out into the forest to gather around with the torches and the Eichenbaum. So you
right.
don't want this. This is dangerous. To diffuse the threat, you have to remove the people from the toxic environment, and uh,
Yeah,
and eventually, yes, that environment can be reduced. The toxicity in that environment can be reduced over time, but
yes,
immediately to diffuse the threat is the environment. I think it's just my
yeah,
opinion, of course.
yeah. No, it's a great idea. Halavai. That I mean, we have a bunch of friends who sent their kids over to America because the kids were kind of falling off the wagon, whatever wagon happened to be, and they sent them to America to Outward Bound kind of things, and they came back and it did wonders for them. Um,
Yeah,
but
I doubt it worked for very long. Like you
what?
really need a outward bound is 2 weeks at most, and it costs whatever it costs, $5,000.
Oh,
But
really?
yeah, you need like 2 years. You need 2 years of this. It really needs to be a
Right.
long term commitment. And even then, 4 years, 5 years, long time.
Okay.
At the
Well,
crucial stage of development.
I
Not
a
before, not
hundred
after.
percent agree with you, and I think that's
Oh, good, we
an
agreed on
important
something.
an important starting point.
Yeah,
But I think the idea of getting the countries of the world to support Outward Bounds or sending them to Dartmouth or whatever is it's
you
just not going to
realize
happen.
these are. I'm
Yeah,
exaggerating.
I
I'm
know,
exaggerating.
but I think
You,
yeah,
it is not the case that we have no possibility for accommodating 5,000 kids in every state. That would make a difference in Gaza. We could take 10,000 kids of between the ages of 8 and 12 in every state in the union and put them, and we all took responsibility for their development. That would make a difference. It would make a
hmm.
tiny, small difference. But
Uh-huh.
let's start there.
Do you think the families would willingly give up their kids? Maybe, yeah. Who the heck knows?
Yeah, a lot of them would. Yeah, a lot of them would.
They would, yeah.
If they're going to a nice
So
place like Florida, let them go to Florida,
yeah,
or
I
let
mean
them.
that's
What is
what
the
was it
kid
called,
interested in? A
AFS.
lot of them
They
aren't.
used to do that. They used to do that with high schoolers. They would AFS, right? Year abroad
Yeah,
kind of thing. But
yeah,
here we're
and
talking
also
not. Yeah,
we have
go ahead.
in the ghetto kids in New York City. They come to Vermont, and they get theoretically they get they're made nicer and more friendly.
theoretically,
Well, they
yeah.
are nicer and more friendly for the time that they're in Vermont. Then they go
That's
back and they
right.
become ghetto
So
kids.
yeah, so
It's a problem.
that's the problem. They haven't America hasn't, the world and America haven't dealt with their own ghettos. So it seems unlikely that they're going to be able to deal in any positive way with a whole nation of jihadists. I mean, the way that
Yeah, but
Lebanon does it,
my point is
apparently. Yeah,
my point is we don't understand the scope of the problem, so we're like,
yeah,
oh, maybe we could send them for two weeks to a little camp in Maine, and that will help. But that won't
yeah,
help.
yeah.
It's
It won't
the
help.
problem is deeper, and it requires a deeper, more robust solution.
Right.
Anyway, I
Yeah.
have to go because my poor doggy is needing to go
Okay, I'll let you
outside.
go. Thanks so much for your time, and then maybe we'll,
But
if when you come up with a practical solution, I want to have you back
yeah,
on.
well,
Huh?
all right,
You
okay.
know, I mean, it's a
Yeah,
great idea, but it
but
means that you have to have
listen,
10,000 families adopting kids in America.
this isn't my only solution. I mean, there's 2 million people in Gaza, but the rest of the world is 5 billion. So I wish the outside world would, instead of just sitting around and watching them develop these homicidal ideologies, I wish
Right.
that we would all care more. Um, you know, I just I I
Yeah.
wish that we would take greater responsibility because when some horrible violence erupts, we go, "Oh my God, how horrible that they killed the poor Israelis." Then the Israelis bomb, and we go, "Oh my God, how horrible!" But we don't do anything, and we
Right.
could all assume a greater degree of responsibility. And because I grew up within the university and I'm not working at one now, that's the solution that comes to my mind. Is like, what can my local institution do to make a tiny little bit of difference? And my local institution could allow 25 kids from Gaza to come. Tomorrow they could do that. And that would be a tiny little drop in the bucket. But why not? To start there. And I
Hmm.
believe that the union of bricklayers and the union of magicians in California or you know
Hmm.
wherever it is in
Yeah.
Austria, they could also make a similar kind of contribution and agree to be responsible for for these people, for the development of these people, and give what we can.
And hope that
Anyways,
they don't become jihadists in those
exactly.
places.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's a risk that they can take. Whatever. I'm not worried about that risk. I'm not worried. Just like when you go into a prison and you sometimes you say, "Oh wow, that kid he was a murderer," but you let him out into the community, he'll probably become a poet and a writer. He just needs to wander around. Well, sometimes the people do become poets, but every once in a while they murder the girl down the street. It's
Yeah.
unfortunate.
What's the rate of recidivism in America now? 70%?
Um,
Something? I
it's
don't know.
well the yeah, it's bad.
I don't know.
Anyhow,
And anyways, okay.
all
Thanks
right.
so
I
much,
think
Theo.
we got a robust and fascinating discussion. I hope to have one again very soon
Thanks.
with you.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Okay.
Take care.
Ciao. Bye.
Bye. Ciao.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, share it with your friends, and leave a comment below. Your support helps us create more exciting content for you.